Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to do Silent Hill 2 Remaster on ARC GPU. If you remember on my last video on Silent Hill, they said that the A750 is the minimum requirement to play the game at 1080p, low to medium settings to have a stable 30 FPS. But you will see in this video that is not true. Welcome to Response PC, I'm Dunk. Let's game on. We're going to test all those GPU on my trusty i5-12600K and 32GB of memory. Make sure we don't have any bottleneck on those sides. So starting with the bottom of the ARC GPU lineup, the A310. This 4GB card gives you an error message saying that the card don't have enough VRAM, which is 6, and this card only have 4. But for some reason, ARC GPU can use the system memory to compensate. So out of 4GB, we're using 5.4GB of VRAM, meaning we're using 1.4GB of the system memory to compensate. The system memory is right now at 11.7GB. The CPU is mostly doing nothing, 20%, 25% of utilization, and playing obviously at 1080p. The render at low seems to be the preset, and the XeSS at ultra performance to be able to reach 32 FPS. That will be the lowest you can even go to be able to play this game on the A310. And even if you can play at 32 FPS, the visual is not appealing at all. Jumping to the next card, the A380. This is now a 6GB VRAM card, so we don't have the warning of 6GB not sufficient to play the game anymore. The GPU goes swim a little bit in system memory because out of 6GB of VRAM, we're using 6.5, so 500 megabyte are being used out of the system memory. We're using 11.8GB of system memory. The GPU is a PEG most of the time at 1080p, but this time XeSS at balance instead of ultra performance. The rendering or preset low is stay the same, and that will give us an average FPS of 43. Now this is becoming highly playable. I would say just playable. Visual are okay-ish, but being at over 30 FPS and this is a story-driven game, I'd say it's playable. Jumping to one of my favorite ARC GPU, the A580, always giving a surprising result for the pricing. This card is the real minimum requirement for this game. The A580 I was able to play at 1080p, medium settings renderer, and XeSS balance, and I get an average of 63 FPS. We're not even at what the dev asked, a mix of medium-low to have a 30 FPS stable. We are at real medium, nothing at low, at least the renderer preset medium. We averaging over 60 FPS. Not the A750, the A580. You can probably jump some settings to high and still be above 30 FPS. I'm telling you guys, this GPU is really the golden ARC card. Then what about the A750, which was supposed to be the minimum requirement? Because the A580 can play at medium settings at 60 FPS plus. Even the A380 can play at low settings over 40 FPS. So the real minimum requirements should be the A380, not the A750. Because the A750 we can play at 1080p XeSS quality and the render or preset at high, and we give us an average of 62 FPS. One less FPS than the A580, but we are at high settings instead of medium. And even at those settings, the GPU is not even pegged at 100%. We're hovering in the low 90s to the high 80s percentage of utilization, and VRAM is at 7.5. This GPU should be in the recommended settings, not the minimum requirement. And finally, the A770 LE. Still at 1080p, but we put the render at epic, or the graphical settings at epic. I don't know why they call it a renderer. XeSS at quality. We get an average of exactly 60 FPS. So if you want to the highest setting possible, the A770 LE can do it. We get some dip in the low 50s and some highs in the low 70s. The game is highly playable at maximum settings. I mean, almost maximum settings. If you push XeSS to ultra quality, your FPS is going to drop in the low 40s. So every card can play the game if you want to include the A310 at those low settings. And for sure, the A750 is not the minimum requirement. It's more like the A380. The recommended settings should be the A750. On that note, thanks for watching and see you next time. And subscribe.